slides okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Chloe.
Perfect, fab. So, first of all, lovely to meet you all. So, I'll just introduce myself first of all. So, I'm a financial advisor with Meta Advisors. So, I work with individuals and businesses around all aspects of their finances, ranging from areas such as protection planning. So, that's areas like insurances to effectively make sure your assets and your income are protected should anything happen to you. And that's from both a individual and a business perspective. We also look at savings and investment planning, so effectively understanding what you've got in terms of your savings and investments to effectively make sure that you're maximising your opportunities. And again, from a business point of view, if you've got any profit in the business, for example, what you should or could be doing with it to maximise it. And then finally, we look at retirement planning. So understanding, when you want to retire, the lifestyle that you want in retirement, and how we can effectively help you to achieve that. So today's session is focused around, as you can see on screen, female financial well-being. It's an area that I am extremely passionate about. And, next slide. Perfect. And really, there are various barriers for women when it does come to engaging with finance. And the two main barriers really are perception of finance, but also personal barriers. Now, from a perception point of view, the world of finance has always been very male dominated. And actually, I would say that it does still continue to be so. There is the perception that investing is just for men. And actually, the reality isn't far from the perception. And by that, I mean that investing is still very heavily dominated by men. There are far more male fund managers. There are far more men investing day to day, and far more male investment directors as well. And it's actually quite interesting. If you Google famous investors, what you will see, whether you leave it on like the standard Google page or you click on the images page, it's a string of photos of white men in suits, all looking very, very similar. And really, I think that is the picture of investing. If you Google famous female investors, actually, 5 or 6 photos come up. And 1 or 2 of those will be your Dragon's Den type investors. Funnily enough, Karen Brady doesn't actually come up, but she is the sort of investor that I naturally come to think of. But they are your Dragon's Den venture capitalist, not quite investors in the day-to-day sense. And actually, I think we really struggle to come up with a household name for a female investor. So the perception really is still very much the reality. Now, on a personal barriers level, I do believe that it starts from a young age, because there's nobody that women and girls can look up to and think, I want to be like her. I want to be an investor. And when we talk about career paths for children, actually, is this one that women are encouraged down? Actually, probably not. And actually, when it comes into things like adulthood, etc., we don't talk about money. So historically, it's always been a very taboo subject. You've got Talk Money Week, which is actually there to raise awareness of the fact that we need to talk about it more. And actually, female to female, do women talk to each other about, their pensions, their investments, etc.? No, it's often, again, seen as quite a taboo subject. So there are quite a lot of, personal barriers. And the perception of, I believe, wealth and finance being very male dominated, it does lead to those feelings of financial inadequacy in terms of our understanding, in terms of our capability, but then that also leads into our actual, our wealth as well. And it's because nobody has really cared to talk to us about it, which has then led to women not engaging with it. And actually, from an accessibility point of view, women looking to enter the industry and actually feel like they have the confidence and the empowerment to talk to somebody about it, if you're met with, and it's an awful phrase, but pale, stale and male, actually you're not talking to somebody who you feel is going to understand you. So again, that can be a real barrier for women to actually engage with the industry entirely. Now, this slide here, I think, is such an important slide because it does show how the financial milestones in a woman's life do impact, and milestones and financial milestones, how they impact a woman. And I think the first thing we need to do is really recognize and appreciate that the structure of a woman's life is extremely different to that of a man's. And actually, it's this structure that means women will face far more obstacles, far more financial penalties as they move throughout their lives. And that's why it means that financial planning is really important. So if I just take you through these milestones. So in your 20s and 30s, a female in her 20s, a woman will typically encounter 3 things. So it's the start of the career, moving out of your parents' home, living on your own, and also possibly starting a family. Now, when you start your first job, the first barrier that women will come across is the gender pay gap. So today there is still a gap between what men and women earn, and that gap is currently standing at around 14.9%. So for women who enter the workforce, they're already starting off in a weaker position financially than their male counterparts. Now, next up, women are less likely to live with their parents. So when they reach an age where they find more independence, actually they're more likely to have moved out and be paying rent. And because of that, women's expenses are often higher. And actually, it's quite staggering. 63% of a woman's salary on average will go towards rent versus 49% of a man's. So actually, a woman's excess income is significantly reduced in comparison. So actually, we can see where both of those factors already, gender pay gap, women's outgoings being tied up more due to their independence can actually affect salary, but also the excess income and the ability to save. Now, when it comes to having children, again, that gap between what men versus women earn can actually become even wider. And particularly by taking time off to start a family, actually the gap in a woman's pension contributions at this stage can have a huge impact on the pension growth and also the pension value. And it's quite a scary stat where effectively by a woman having 2 years of mat leave, it would reduce an average earning woman's pension pot by £25,500. And actually what we also need to take into account here is that actually if a woman spent 9 months out on maternity leave, for example, actually you might have missed out on nominal pay rises, possible promotions. So again, that financial gap between men and women widens even further. Now, when we move into 30s and 40s, so in 30s, the gender pay gap, again, it's still prominent, and actually it does widen when women are in their mid-30s to 40s, and it's mainly because this is the age where women do tend to take a career break to raise children. And other life events do occur at this stage that can impact a woman's finances. So first of all, right at the top there, you can see getting married. So the average cost of a wedding in 2023 is £25,000. And another life event, buying your first home, women are shown to need an average of at least 9 years to save up, whereas men could save the same amount in 6 years. And again, all of these things are because of gender pay gap, women having to take time off work because of having children, being more independent and moving out earlier, which means their income is significantly reduced. All of that penalises women from actually being able to move on to these different life stages. And as I mentioned a moment ago, women then taking time off to to raise their children, given the cost of childcare nowadays, actually a lot of couples will make the decision to actually for somebody to stay off work and take a career break rather than go to work and pay for childcare. And it's because the net cost can often be similar. But again, what's often missed in that decision making is the gender pension gap, because again, women are doing less paid work because actually they're doing more unpaid work due to taking time off to look after the children. So again, that makes a big impact on pension savings. And again, another quite scary stat is that women lose around £2,500 a year in retirement as a result of taking time out of the workplace. And actually women who took more than 2 years off saw this loss increase to around £3,000 per annum. So actually not only by taking a career break, we're missing out on promotions because of that time taken off to raise children. Actually, you're also having to negotiate with your workplaces to have more flexible hours to look after children if you do plan on, continuing to work. And again, that can mean a pay cut. It can mean a backward step in terms of the climb up the career ladder. And actually, all of that leads to a hit on the pension as well. So actually, all of these factors you can see are effectively reducing income, it's reducing savings, it's stretching finances. And again, which means that you can't put more away to support your future. Now, when we then look at in the 40s and 50s, at this point in time, many women might find themselves separating from their partners. And a stat that's pretty terrifying is that in most marriages, 90% of the pension wealth is actually in the name of just one partner. And that one partner is pretty much always the husband. And that pension gap is absolutely huge. And it's down to all of those things that we've just talked about, those career breaks, etc., the pay gap, the lack of excess income, which means women aren't able to fund their pensions as much. And actually, a key thing to note on that actually is that if a woman does remarry and they've been receiving maintenance to support themselves, etc., there's the possibility that maintenance will also stop as well. Menopause hits. So due to the time in a woman's life, 50s to 60s, actually the menopause hits, and it can be a really hard time for some women. And it's often at this point in time that around 10% of women have had to give up work because of the menopause and that kind of physical, mental strain. And actually for those who stay, the quality of work and working experience is seriously affected. So actually 1 in 4 women actually consider leaving work because of it. And actually 15% of women have said that they've called in sick due to menopause symptoms. So again, it's something that has to be acknowledged and again, acted upon to actually help support women more. I know that Davina McCall has been fantastic actually about trying to raise awareness of menopause. And it has to be something that has to be seriously considered. Now, if we look at in the 60s, when women enter their 60s, this is again when you can just see the impact of all of these different financial milestones. So at retirement, the gender pension gap in the UK, as it stands, is 40.5%. And again, it's because in addition to having lower salaries, women are more likely to have career breaks, take part-time jobs and have caring responsibilities. And with that point on caring responsibilities, those caring responsibilities actually often go up and down the generations. So actually those in their 60s are often caring for their grandchildren, but actually also elderly parents and relatives. And the reality is, they're unpaid carers, and it can often be a full-time job. And whilst it is due to helping and supporting those family members, actually it can take a toll on your mental health. And actually we can see from the stat on screen there, which shows actually almost 20% of those termed sandwich carers show symptoms of mental health. And 1 in 5 people aged 50 to 64 are actually carers to an older family member. And 80% of those 1 in 5 people are also providing childcare for the grandchildren. So you can just see it's this constant stream of unpaid caring pretty much throughout the entirety of a woman's life. Now, when you get to being in your 70s, statistically, women are living longer than men. So women statistically still have a quarter of their lives left, whilst men just have over 1/5. And again, that's where it hits quite hard as well, because not only are we in a worse off financial position, we've then got to make it last longer. And actually the cost of that is then shown through care fees. So for a man living out their life in a care home in the UK, the cost of that is about 50k less for a man than it is for a woman. And again, it's because the life expectancy of females in care homes is actually significantly higher. So again, it shows that women are in care homes for longer because we do live longer as well. So overall, what you can see throughout all of those different milestones is that from the start, right from the get-go, women are disadvantaged by the gender pay gap. The years in which you take time out to look after children widens that gap further. Again, those career breaks can reduce pensions as well. Negotiating going back to work can also be tricky because, of course, it often falls to women to take flexible hours and maybe take a less well-paid job so that they can be flexible when it comes to looking after the kids. All of that means a reduction in pay, which means a reduction in pension. And actually, when you get to the point where you might be thinking about retiring, actually a man's pension pot already has a load more in it. And actually that just highlights the disparity between, the size of women's pension pots and actually a woman's responsibilities and their life map. Because actually women outlive men, we're raising a family and we're trying to juggle a job, but also at the end of it have less in our pocket. So essentially through no fault of our own, actually we're more likely to end up with less in our pockets, a gap in our pension pot, but more responsibilities and the expectation to make it last longer. So what can we do? So first of all, the importance of financial planning is so vital. And actually 4 top tips. First one, we have to be actively seeking to fund our short, medium and long-term goals. So from a short-term goals point of view, first and foremost, it's so important to have an emergency fund. So an emergency fund to fund those short-term expenses that you weren't expecting. So whether that's, your car fails its MOT and it needs new tires, or your boiler breaks, or, it's important to have that pot of money there so that in the event of that happening, you can fund it and it's not going to throw your plans off course. And again, it's the same within a business. If you run your own business, actually, things like saving for your tax bill, anything that you're going to need to be funding, any additional qualifications, additional courses, etc. Any plans that you have in the short term, plans or unexpected things occurring, and by short term I really mean sort of the next 3 to 5 years, those events do need to be actively planned for, actively budgeted for and saved for, and also put somewhere that's really easily accessible. So just an easy access savings account, because that's where it's really important that you can get to that money should you need it. Now, from a medium-term goals perspective, I would say from a personal point of view, it'll be things like, saving for a house deposit or paying for a child's education, overpaying your mortgage to clear it quicker, especially with the mortgage rates at the moment. But actually also, if you're planning to start a family, having those conversations to actually understand what does that mean for you financially. Not only you as a household, it's you personally. What does that mean for you? And then thinking about medium-term goals from a business perspective, again, it might be things like, making enough profit in order to employ an additional person to help you in your business, or having the ability to rent your own office space, or even just giving you enough to give you the ability to start increasing your pension contributions. And then in terms of our longer term goals, the reality for this is looking ahead. So looking ahead to retirement, when you plan stopping working, making sure that you're plugging that pension pot. So what it really comes back to is, are you saving enough for the retirement that you want? Do you know when you went to stop working? Do you know what lifestyle that you want in retirement and what that means in terms of an income? And if you don't know, you can find that out. You can find that out by sitting down, looking at those plans, but actually also speaking to a financial advisor, because actually a financial advisor can help you to work out actually what you need to be doing and what you need to be saving. Now, the next point is needing to have protection for ourselves and our families against unforeseen circumstances. So we can do all of this great planning, we can be funding our short-term goals, our medium-term, our long-term goals. But what happens if the unexpected happens? What if you fall ill and you can't work, or you had an accident which put you out of work for 12 months? Do you understand what your company's sick pay policy is? You'll be so, the number of people I come across who don't actually know what would happen in the event of something happening to them is quite high, because it's not something you ever really want to think about. But the ultimate risk with that is actually not knowing is worse, because actually not knowing what they'll pay you and not knowing how long they'll pay you for, actually that can be really, really staggering to your finances, actually, if you haven't put a plan in place. And again, if you're self-employed or run your own business, if you stop working, does your business stop as well? So are you kind of the sole cog that turns the wheel in your business, which means if you stopped, your income would stop coming in? And again, for both of those things, by just understanding what you have in place, what you would need and what the gap is, that's the first place to start. Because again, there are protections that you can put in place, so insurances, etc., so that, if you are off work, you can protect your income. You've still got a source of income coming in to, cover your finances, cover your short-term outgoings, cover your essential outgoings, so that you can make sure that all of your plans can stay on track until you come back to work. Now, the third point, we do need to understand the impact of career breaks, and we need to be preparing for them. So we need to know what impact a change of working pattern is going to have. So if you're starting a family, what is the effect that maternity leave is going to have on your finances? So again, comes back to knowing what your company's policy is, but also your career as well. So understanding what impact that's going to have in terms of pay, in terms of opportunities for promotion in the future, etc. But also, caring for elderly relatives as well. So it doesn't necessarily just mean, if you're starting a family, but actually if you're caring for elderly relatives as well, which means you're also having to take more time off work, what financial impact is that going to have on you? And that's now and in the future. And what can you do to kind of put plans in place to combat that? And finally, we do need to prepare for an increased life expectancy and a long retirement. And the reality is only you can do that. You're the only one who knows when you want to retire, the lifestyle that you want in retirement, and create those plans and map that out. And like I said, make sure that you are plugging that pension pot, because nobody else is going to be there to do it for you. Now, in terms of financial planning for the self-employed, on this, I think the first thing to say is that by making a leap to self-employed as opposed to an employed role, it is an incredibly brave decision. By being self-employed, it does give you, more flexibility on working hours, but actually also your earnings potential as well. And actually, I think the key thing that I want to focus on here is actually, what do you lose when you become self-employed? Because it is really important. And I'll also come on, obviously, to talk about what you gain as well. But first of all, it's important to say that you do miss out on those workplace benefits. So first one being, you miss out on auto enrollment into your employer's workplace scheme. So you miss out on those automatic payments being taken from your pay. You don't even have to think about it. It's all done for you. But actually what you're also missing out on is the employer contributions. So it's free money. So at present, employers have to put in 3% of your salary. Now, whilst it might feel difficult to pay into a pension right at the start of launching your own business, at the same time, it's really important not to let it fall by the wayside, because again, it can be much harder to fund retirement the later you start. So actually, by investing in your own personal pension right from the get-go, actually it can, even if it's minimal, it can just be a good place to start, just to start building those habits. And again, just understanding what do those contributions mean for you later on in life. And that's where speaking to a professional, they can help you kind of map that out. Now, second of all, you miss out on steady income. And all of your tax, all of your national insurance, etc., is all dealt with through PAYE. And actually, that can be one of the biggest hurdles as a self-employed person that you face, because the reality is not only are you having to seriously budget, so the penny, not only on your personal finances but your business as well, because you don't have that consistent income anymore. But actually, you need to also be thinking ahead and working out what your tax bill is going to be. So actually getting one of these programs like QuickBooks or getting an accountant, all of that will help you to just plan and budget those areas better. You've then got maternity leave. So at present, if you're employed, if you go off on maternity leave, your employer is legally obligated to pay you statutory sick pay, maternity pay. However, again, when you're self-employed, actually you lose out on that. So if you are self-employed and you are planning to take time off work and start a family, actually you need to plan for that. First of all, is your business able to continue in the event of you being off work? So again, if you stop, does everything stop? If so, you need to consider how you're going to fund that maternity leave, but also the impact that it's going to have on your business in terms of things like, customer engagement, visibility amongst competitors, etc. You've got to understand it from both sides. Again, sick pay. So along the similar vein to the above, actually, again, if you're off sick, what does happen? What happens to your business? Can someone step in to make sure your business can carry on as normal? Again, does your income take a hit? So again, it is important to have a plan so that actually if that does happen, whether it's an emergency fund for yourself, whether it's having one of these insurances in place that will actually pay you an income in the event of you being off until you can go back to work, is again important just to see what your options are there. And holiday pay. So again, most employers will give 20 days paid leave. But again, for you as a self-employed person, that's no longer the case. So again, how are you going to fund not only the holiday, but actually is your business also going to stand still for 2 weeks whilst you're away? Or are there things, in the background that you can make sure things can carry on whilst you're away? Now, obviously, whilst you do miss out on all of those things, and actually you do have to plan for all of these things happening, self-employment, of course, has its benefits. In that, it does give you unlimited earning potential. Your earnings aren't defined by a manager or a company structure or pay grades or salary boundaries, etc. Your earning potential is limitless because it's completely in your control to make it a success. You've also got greater flexibility. So, if you're somebody who's a early bird, for example, who prefers to start at 7 a.m, or if you're right at the other end of the scale and you're a night owl and you're happy to work into the night because it fits around your schedule, if you've got children, for example, if you need your hours to fit around childcare, etc., then they can do, and you don't have to worry about it being a detriment to you getting a promotion or having to take a pay cut, etc. Better work-life balance. Now, this one is definitely up for debate because there are a lot of those who are self-employed who might say their work-life balance is worse due to the responsibility and stress that you can place on yourself by running a business. But actually, you do have a say in, when you work and how you work, and you can allow work to fit around your life more. And then finally, it does give you more opportunity to save for a better future than that you want to, because it does come back to that, limitless earning potential and ability to create that life that you want. Now, this slide here, it just demonstrates further what I've been speaking about. So those are the benefits there, of course, that you do lose by becoming self-employed. So holiday pay, obviously, you get 5.6 weeks paid annual leave. So again, it's understanding how that's going to impact taking time off if you're self-employed. Sick pay, you're entitled to 28 weeks statutory sick pay. So again, as a self-employed person, if you're off work and that's a whole period where you're not working. Maternity leave, again, if you're looking to start a family, generally employers will give you at least statutory maternity leave, which is around 39 weeks pay. Some offer you more than that. Some companies are really, really generous. So again, if it's something that you're looking to do, it's just understanding your options, understanding the impact that's going to have. And then finally, it is that auto enrollment piece into your company pension scheme. So actually, your employer is legally obligated to provide you with a pension, and actually they need to contribute at least 3% into that. So again, it's free money. So it's something that you just need to consider in terms of what you're missing out on. And on the right, obviously, you can see that's all of those benefits that you do lose. So actually, if you do want to become self-employed, or even if you are currently self-employed, it's just understanding actually all of those things that you need to be considering and taking into account as a self-employed person when managing your finances and how you're going to navigate that. And actually, not only the benefits I've listed, but you also need to just consider the additional costs. So things like office expenses, secretarial services, compliance fees, premises costs, all of those different areas where actually it's going to be a cost to the business. But then the final two are the ones that will not only protect you personally should you be off unwell, but actually it also allows you to plan for your future whilst you're working. So you've got income protection. That's, as I mentioned earlier, it's an insurance that you can put in place so that if you are off work sick, it pays you an income until you can go back to work. Contributing to a pension early, actually by starting early, actually it means that you can hopefully get to that goal of that lifestyle that you want in retirement, that time at which you want to retire. So rather than just thinking, oh, it's, you know, far away, I can think about it later, it's just understanding exactly where you are, where you want to be, and creating that plan to help you get there as well. Okay, so from a financial planning point of view, again, as I mentioned earlier, you know, you've got to plan for those short, medium and long-term goals. So from a short-term goals perspective, if you do run your own business, first thing is keep your personal and your business finances separate. You know, your tax bill's your responsibility, keep track of everything, keep a separate pot for your tax bill so that you're not suddenly scrabbling around to try and find the money, because it's really important. Like I said, you can utilize an accountant services, or you can use, you know, these sites like QuickBooks, etc., which are really, really helpful to track and manage. Protecting your income in the event of illness or accident. So if you are off work unwell, or you have an accident and you can't work, actually you need to make sure that you've got a backup plan, you know, an income stream coming in so that you're not financially impacted. And as I mentioned before, there are lots of different plans that you can put in place to allow you to do that. And that will make sure that, you know, your finances aren't affected, nor your family's, and it gives you that peace of mind. And then finally, on the short-term goal side of things, is that emergency pot. And actually what we would always ordinarily recommend is about, I would say, as an emergency pot, generally 3 to 6 months worth of your outgoings is what we recommend as an emergency fund. From a business owner's point of view, actually we'd recommend about 6 to 12 months. And the reason for that is because when you start to become self-employed, or you're running your own business, actually there's often a lot more costs associated with that side of things, as well as your personal life. And particularly if you are just starting your own business, actually it usually takes about 12 months to get the business off the ground. So you just want to make sure that you can at least afford to do so. But actually you can fund those unexpected expenses from it as well. Now, in terms of the medium-term goals, actually having an easy access pot to fund lifestyle events. So if you are planning to start a family, or you need to care for elderly relatives, you know, thinking about the time that you wish to have off, how are you going to fund that? So again, working on that maternity leave figure that we looked at earlier of 39 weeks statutory maternity pay, actually you need to understand what do you need in the bank to be able to fund that goal. But again, from a self-employment point of view, you know, is your business sustainable enough to be able to carry on without you? So it's just understanding those key points. And then also, if you do have goals which are, you know, 5 years or more away, actually explore your options in terms of, you know, how you're holding those funds. Because actually investing, for example, we recommend usually a period of 5 years or more when you're looking to invest, because investing money is not a quick win. It's medium to long-term investment. Actually exploring that option to make your money work harder for you over the medium to long term, exploring that with somebody that you feel really comfortable with, you know, ask all the questions that you need to, and actually educating and kind of empowering yourself just to understand, you know, what opportunities are out there to make your money work harder for you. And like I said earlier, just don't let it just be a man's game. And then in terms of the long-term goal side of things, actually start saving for retirement early. You know, we saw earlier how all of those milestones that women go through in their early lives can hugely impact their retirement pot. And we do call it the gender pension gap. And there is a stat to show that actually women at the start of their career, if they were to increase their pension pot by 5% from that point, they will have pretty much closed the pension gap by the time they retire. But whether or not you start, make sure you do something. And actually the infographic just on this slide here shows what a huge impact starting early and saving regularly can have on your pension pot. You know, you can almost have pretty much 3 times the amount based on £200 a month if you start saving early. And that's not even just for the self-employed, that's for anybody. So I guess the final thing to say really is just, no matter what life stage you're at, it's never too late to do something. So even if it's just simply to be more aware, you know, of how your life will be financially impacted. If you haven't saved enough, you know, even if you're someone nearing the end of your career, for example, just gaining an understanding of where you are, you know, how you can optimize any savings that you do have, that will make a huge difference in retirement. And actually by understanding your current situation and looking ahead is far, far better than having your head in the sand and not knowing until you get there, which at that point it will be too late. And like I said at the start, don't let it be a man's game. We should feel equally empowered and educated to understand more about our finances. And that will enable us to, have the confidence to seek help where we need it and to achieve our goals as well. And that's where it's just important to not let those barriers stop you from seeking financial advice.